Yeah.
So I just updated. We'll see what happens.
Okay, Uncle Bobby.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're gonna give you.
Okay, no,
a little
I'm
bit
still
more
getting
time.
the same thing.
Okay.
I'm still getting the same thing.
Okay. I think we could do it on your phone. This is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just happy that you're here, and thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe Chris, while we wait for Uncle Bobby to set up, you could just tell us more about the initiatives that Grad Voice has put forth, just as an introduction.
Oh, as an introduction, so great question. So you're a great interviewer already. Thank you. Grad Voice was formed to speak on behalf of international students and students of color who felt that they didn't have a voice. And what we wanted to do was just create basically a voice for students to feel like they're heard and feel like their needs are heard, with artistically, mentally. And we wanted just to try to bring a different vision to the SFAI community. And even though it was a hard time during the chaos that happened during the school year, we partnered with our allies, like Student Alliance, for example, and we were able to, pay for students' rent, pay for students' plane tickets, to even, keep the international students from getting deported. And that meant a lot to me because a lot of these international students are my friends. And so to work with the student body to get the SEVP and OPT status, resolved, and that was a big win for us. And we hope that Grad Voice continues into the school's new revision. That way, we could bring more diversity and bring a cohesiveness to the student body that has never been before. So that is a little bit of the history of Grad Voice. Unless you want to add to it, and then, or Reed, if you want to say anything while you were trying to get up and walk away for a second, sorry.
I just realized I'm on a hard chair for days now. Go sit on the sofa.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, at the time, it was some international students were struggling. Plus we felt, and Chris, you approached me, there was a feeling that people of color specifically and international students tend to keep their voices down and wait their turn. And it was a little bit kind of getting swollen in the tumultuous events that were taking place. And so we felt that it was a good time to just open up the conversation, give those people who are, voiceless, to give a voice. So I'm really glad that you guys are really taking it up a notch and really making it, an activist moment. And a moment to affect change, which I think is very needed. So thank you for that.
Very well.
And thank you, Reed. You're not just a distinguished professor at SFAI, but you're our faculty advisor, and we've leaned on you, not just for advice, but just really with respect to an action plan. You really is good helping us get things done. So I'm just using this opportunity to thank you on behalf of Grad Voice as well.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Ross,
It's
really
been an honor, really. It's been really wonderful to, I just love working with the students, and it's been really wonderful to know that we're doing something important and that you're making change, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you. And thanks everyone involved.
Yeah. All right. What are you thinking, Cav? Should we start, or we want to wait?
Let's get it. I think we've had a good amount of time to wait. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand you over the floor, Chris, to just get things started with respect to introduction. I think Uncle Bobby is personal to me because I've been working with Uncle Bobby for over 5 years. A lot of my work involves my travels with Uncle Bobby as a videographer. Sometimes I joke with Uncle Bobby that I'm not sure if the lines between filmmaker, or I say filmmaker in training, and an activist are blurred, because we tend to get deep in the trenches together sometimes, and I really appreciate him. The reason why I thought it was important for him to be here was because of two things. Number one, he's not just a leading voice with respects to the conversation that's being had right now in the United States around state violence and police brutality, but he is also a family member that's personally impacted by state violence. He's the uncle of Oscar Grant, and he has a lot of experience working with other families who have equally been affected by similar atrocities. So I'm going to ask Chris if you could just get things going in terms of house rules. I know we've set aside some time for questions at the end of the session, but then we'll ask Uncle Bobby to introduce himself.
Awesome. All right, guys. So house rules. Basically, we'll leave questions about 15, maybe 20 minutes, depending on what's going on. And you could either raise your hand or you can definitely put it in the chat. Since we have 38 of you, I don't think we need to use the other format that we have set up. And I will go down the list one by one. Or I can even just call out your name, unmute yourself, and then go ahead and ask Uncle Bobby the question. I will then, after your question, I will then mute you if you don't mute yourself. Other than that, we're just gonna have fun, and it's gonna be an open discussion. Now, Cav, did you want me to read the introduction that you wrote? Even though you said this fantastic introduction, no. I can't follow that up. It's gonna sound like rehearsed. Uncle Bobby, all right, I'll tell you that. And I'm from Oakland. Yeah, I'm born in East Oakland. I'm from Oakland, so this means a lot to me. And I know this means a lot to my family because they were born in East Oakland as well. And growing up near the Coliseum, and I know where Fruitvale Station is, and so I have a personal connection, with that. And when I heard about Oscar Grant, his nephew, that really struck me, and I'm like, that could have been me. And that I don't know, if anyone here has had loss similar to that, but you either are in fight or flight syndrome, and Uncle Bobby went into fight mode, and he went out and protested, and he started organizations, and it's an honor to be in the Zoom. So I wish I was in front of him right now, give him a big hug, but it's an honor to be in this format with him, to hear him speak. So without further ado, I'd like to give you Uncle Bobby X.
Well, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, good, because I'm actually doing this from my cell phone, and I'm used to doing it from my computer. So it's gonna be a little different doing it from the phone, but I'm gonna be looking down at the computer since I can see everybody much better. But first I want to just thank Cav for the invitation. To be able to share, my thoughts, experiences, and of course my hope, and even some ideas as far as what our community can do to be a part of this movement. Definitely want to thank you, Christopher, for sharing what you shared. And it took me right to this this interview just I had the other day. And the question was asked, actually a reporter from the LA Times asked, she says, out of all these years, what was what you feel your greatest achievement? And I said that there were children that was in middle school and high school that we spoke to on a regular, consistent basis. And then when I do an event somewhere, we'll say at Stanford or UC Berkeley or even Florida A&M, a young person to stand up in the back and raise their hand and say, Uncle Bobby, you came to my middle school when I was in the 8th grade, and what you said impacted me in such a way that I decided I wanted to become an attorney, or I wanted to become a psychologist. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you as a young man was a part of the movement and saw the work that I was doing, because I know it hasn't been in vain. sometimes I ask the questions, has anything really been accomplished? Because if I just throw this out there, since Oscar's murder, January 1st, 2009, there's been over 1,200 people killed in the state of California. So what have I really accomplished? Or it's been 1,300 or 13,000 killed in the United States since Oscar's murder. So of course we begin to answer this question, have we really got any traction to bring about real change? And I'm gonna say yes. The murder of George Floyd tells us that 10 years of work that we've been doing has erupted in such a way that it's telling us that people realize just how heinous police violence is today, and everybody's coming out. So yes, I wanted to throw that in there just to share and say thank you for sharing that, because it makes me know that the work that we're doing, people are hearing it, and people are responding as yourself is. So thank you for being even the moderator.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, for all the viewers that may not know, I am affectionately known to the community as Uncle Bobby X. I am the uncle of Oscar Grant. Oscar was my very first nephew. We had a very close relationship, and I was tremendously impacted by his murder. His mom is my baby sister, so you can see the dynamics of the relationship. And of course, just watching Oscar grow up was like watching my son grow up, because him and my son were pretty close. So to see him get killed on that platform changed my life. It helped me just see how heinous and sadly how racist this system is, especially the criminal justice system. I mean, we know the system itself is racist, but the criminal justice system is extremely sick in its racism and how it's been perpetrating the harm on us as people of color. I'm not sure how much of an introduction you wanted me to give, but I'll just say and close, and then go ahead and let you pose the question, is that I'm honored to be here. Again, thank you, Cav. Thank you for all the viewers that has come on to our community. And I'm hoping that we'll have a very tremendous and eye-opening discussion going further. Thank you.
And I think that's maybe a good point to start with respect to question, Uncle Bobby. Share with us a little bit about Oscar as a person, and tell us about the case. Tell us how that ties into everything that's happening today.
Sure. So before I make one big mistake, let me also share that my beautiful wife, who has been on my side, definitely since Oscar murder, has been selflessness in her sharing with me with the world, sharing with me at this moment in time. We're actually on our way down to San Diego to see our great-grandbaby. And so we had to stop, to make this work. Sadly, we were actually on our way to a funeral. We got to go to a funeral. The matriarch of her family actually just passed, so we're going to the funeral, which is Saturday in Phoenix. But we definitely thought we'd take this opportunity to see our great-grandbaby in San Diego. So we're right now in between San Diego and LA. But yes, Oscar was a young man that had a world of friends. All those that was on the platform were, of course, Latino, Samoan, Black. He didn't have any of his white friends on that platform that night, but he has a host of white friends. Oscar was that person that just drew people to him. He was a very likable person. And if you saw the movie Fruitvale Station, Michael B. Jordan really resurrected Oscar. So he played Oscar so well that anytime we, as a family watch that movie, we're taken right back to the love of Oscar, the way Michael B. Jordan played him. And he played him not, from what he thought he was, but he came and he laid on my mama's floor with Ryan Coogler. And they studied who Oscar was, understanding his family, his relationship to his daughter, his fiance, his mama, his family, his friends, what kind of person he was in school, just the fact that he was a person, a whole person that was loved, not just by his family, but by the community too. And so what happened to him and then the resurrection of him was when the community saw what happened. They embraced us as a family. And I gotta always say this to the community first. It was a community that embraced us, stood with us, cried with us, went back and forth to court with us, prayed for us with us, prayed with us. But most importantly, utilized the First Amendment right because they said, I am Oscar Grant. And it was because of that love, that unification of the folks in the community, embracing the family, we were able for the first time in California state history to get an officer arrested, charged, convicted, and sent to jail. Sadly, it's historical, so it might sound like a big win, but for us, it's just history. Because again, since Oscar's murder, now one police officer in the state of California out of them 1,300 bodies have been charged, or not been charged, been convicted and sent to jail for murder. So we still got work to do. You know, of course, Oscar helped propel that. He is a flashpoint of the movement today. So if you talk about the civil rights movement, you can't help but talk about Rosa Parks. But Rosa Parks will tell you herself that you can't forget about Emmett Till, because Rosa didn't get up out of that seat because she thought about Emmett Till and what had happened to him and had just had enough and said, I'm not getting up. Well, Oscar is the 21st century Emmett Till. And from him, Elisa Garza lived right around the corner from where Oscar was murdered, was so impacted, her, Patrice Cullors, were so impacted that they began to coin the idea about Black Lives Matter, right? And of course, between Oscar and Trayvon Martin, there were close to 3,000 bodies killed before Trayvon was murdered. So, you know, they had had enough, and then they felt the need to make sure they wrote a letter to Black folks. And then mass media took off with the idea Black Lives Matter. But Black Lives Matter back then when Oscar was murdered. That's the flashpoint. So we can't forget about that time between Oscar and Trayvon, because we leave 3,000 plus bodies unrealized that was murdered during that process of the development of what we know today as the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's how important that is. Of course, technology played a major part in it too, as you know, because now the world had a chance to view what we've been saying for years, that police violence is real. And because of the technology that was used on that platform, if those commuters that were brave enough to pull out their camera, record what happened, uploaded it to YouTube, had millions of viewers within a few days. So the world had a chance to witness the murder of Oscar Grant. And it was from there where the wheels of trying to get justice truly began.
And that's takes me to the next question, Uncle Bobby, the idea that you kept fighting. Tell us about the different avenues that you've exploited or explored to seek justice, and also help us understand with respect to legislation, what has been passed since the fight has begun to amend some of these laws. I understand that there have been some reforms specifically here in the state of California.
Yes. So of course, as you know, sadly, but it had a part to do with what happened with Memsley being arrested. The city of Oakland did like Minnesota, caught on fire. Now, of course, some of it was co-opted, right? But a lot of it had to do with the degradation that the Black community was feeling for so long about police violence in the city of Oakland. I'm gonna do a backdrop of a little history of Oakland so that we can follow what's going on. So in the 30s and 40s, right after the World War II, Black folks came to Oakland or the Bay Area, Richmond, where the shipbuildings was taking place. So many of us came to get those jobs, and competition for that employment took off. So there were battles for it. So Alameda County specifically recruited white officers from the South, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Louisiana, right, with that Jim Crow mentality to come to Oakland to quell these so-called Black folks trying to get these jobs. And so a lot of police beatings began to take place. There was an outcry. And of course, in 1950, the first congressional hearing of police violence took place at the state capitol, the first in the nation. And it was shortly after that, the Black Panthers, who you knew, and Bobby Seale and others said, you know what, we got to patrol our own neighborhood, but they just out of whack. So that's the backdrop of understanding the relationship of the community with the police in the Bay Area. And as you know, the Bay Area is the capital of activism throughout this country, because as goes the Bay Area, so goes the United States, basically, and the world. So that's the backdrop. But in essence, that's what came out in the first few days of Oscar being murdered. The anger, the pain. We're tired of being beat down. You know, it was a major case that was just won with the writer's case, where 100-some-odd Black men were falsified on, put in prison, just beat up, and what have you. And it was a major lawsuit, one that brought in the receivership, or put the Oakland Police Department in receivership, which been in receivership now for, 20 years. And I'm saying that all to say that is the work that the community did in seeking justice became the seed for what we see happening today, because it not only started here, but it went on and morphed into Ferguson, of course, Sanford, where Trayvon was murdered at, Baltimore, Chicago. We could go on. Oakland took a spirit there because activists went to those places and worked with the communities there. And so my position at that time was, I could not control your anger. So if you chose to throw a brick to me, what is a life to a building? Or, what is a life to a window? That was my feelings. I didn't do it myself, nor did I encourage anyone to do it, but I didn't discourage anyone to do it too, because I understood that that was the voice of those that couldn't be heard, and they was expressing how they felt. Then, of course, I was introduced to the idea that legislative route can help change things on a lawyer side, or not so much a lawyer side, but a law side. So I began to pursue legislation. So we got the citizen oversight with independent auditor, I think in 2010, 2011, I forget exactly. And that was my real first stab at it, and all the teeth was plucked out of the committee. So it was really a gumless bill that came into existence. And of course, the agency never really wanted to fund it correctly to really give it the power that it needed to really bring about systemic change. So I was a little bewildered behind that, and I kind of started removing myself from the legislative aspect and just began to try to help bring awareness to folks concerning what police violence is. And so, of course, that campaign went on. And then in 2015, the idea about data. As you know, The Guardian came out with the Counted, the Washington Post came out with some data, and various other organizations coming out with data. So I said, well, that's important. So we got on this campaign to get AB 71 passed, which is the use of force data collection that the Department of Justice does here in the state of California. So now that we got data, this data tells us exactly what we've been saying is true, and no one can turn a blind eye to it. So we made that argument, and then, of course, we made the argument. Dr. Shirley Weber initiated the AB 953, which is the Racial Identification Profiling Act, because we said that not only was the violence happening to the Black community, but it was in nature racist. So the Racial Identification Profiling Act helped give the data to show that many of these killings, many of these arrests, many of these stops were biased by racism of these particular officers. And so, that gave us the numbers. And so that put us in position for Senator Nancy Skinner to help champion 1421, which is the right to know legislation that we got passed on 2019, January 1st. And that's called the right to know. And what that is that it gave us a chance now to get a records of police officers that are considered trouble officers, whether they've been involved in falsifying reports, whether they've been alleged to have had sexual crimes, involved in sexual crimes and harm, whether they've been involved in the shooting, whether they killed or not. And so I'm going to cite an example of why that was important, is because when we were in trial for Johannes Mesley murdering my nephew, the only first of all, they didn't provide any complaints about use of force because they said they didn't have any, but 4 witnesses came forth and testified that they were beat up by Johannes Mesny. So we only knew of 4, but we didn't have anything from the agency. Well, when SB 1421 passed, that gave me the right to make a public records request to the agency to get his history. And so not only did I do that, but every news media and radio station also made that request. And what we got back told us that in 2008 alone, Johannes Mesny had 6 use of force complaints filed against him in 2008. And then in 2009, January 1st, he murders Oscar Grant. So that's why that piece is so important. That's what we're hearing about what happened with George Floyd right now in Minneapolis. Officer Chauvin has 17 complaints filed against him, 2 officer-involved shootings that he was a part of, and 1 youngster he beat up so bad, I'm not sure if he almost killed him, but he beat him up pretty bad. So what he did to George Floyd was a part of his nature. He had done it so long for so many times. So anyway, 1421 is now passed and it's law. So any one of you can make a public records request based on an officer that might have had some complaints filed against them that you're aware of, so we can get the true data. That is tremendous because now we can act proactively. But also we got an AB 748 passed, which is the release of the video and audio of the recording of the lapel camera, whether it be the police car, the lapel camera, or someone's cell phone. You can make that request, and you're supposed to get it in 45 days. They still fight, they provide it, but it's law, and so we can constantly take them to court on those issues. And then this very last one I'll mention is we just got passed, signed into legislation on August 19, 2019, AB 392, which is the use of force legislation, the strictest use of force legislation in the United States, and it's called the California Act to Save Lives. And that same use of force legislation that we got passed for January 1st was kind of duplicated by the Congressional Black Caucus at the judiciary hearing of passing the police reforms, passing the police reforms, what they just put on the Senate floor. Now, we still got work to get it passed, but a lot of that is built off of what the work we have done here in the state of California.
And that this is, and this really, I think for me, it helps me understand just why it's so difficult to convict police officers. Just if you look at just legislation alone, it seems to be in their favor. It seems to work in their favor. But I want you to maybe explain to us a little bit more, because really ultimately we want to understand as a community of artists, how can we get involved? How could we support folks like you on the ground? But before we even get there, take a step back, give us a bird's eye view, just paint a picture with respects to why people on your end of the spectrum feel that the system is inherently racist, and why there are folks on the other side. I can even say the administration. Recently, Bill Bart, the Attorney General, made a statement that the system is not systemically racist. The President of the United States made similar utterances that the system is not inherently racist. Could you just help us reconcile and make sense of it all?
Sure. I mean, the policing agencies originated from what we know as the Paddy Rollers or the Night Watchers. The Paddy Rollers were slave-catching white vigilantes that was paid basically to go out and round up Black folks, right? That either they felt they had ran away from their slave master or for whatever reason. And of course, the Night Watchers were those that basically stood guard in case they felt that the master's house was going to be overtaken, but basically they were also slave catchers. That morphed into the policing agency that we know today. By that morphing into the policing agency that we know today, that same mentality, that same culture is so ingrained that to respect the rights of a Black male specifically, or anyone of color, never really surfaced to be a part of the organization structure. So by design, it is working the way it was built. So it's working perfect. Now, what we have to do is disrupt that. And part of the way we disrupt that, to give a great example, was how Oscar was murdered and how the art community played a major role in getting Johannes Mesley arrested, charged, convicted, and sent to jail. The art community came not to the rescue, but became a part of the major part of the movement. They helped create in these young people that we see today, all in this country protesting, the image of Oscar and the pain of his murder. It was the artist community, and I think they coined it at that time called the hyphy movement, right? So not only was it the skill in artistry, but it was a skill in spoken word, it was a skill in hip hop, it was the hip hop artists involved, those that were gifted in poetry. Every aspect of artistry was involved in waking the consciousness up of the community to become involved in the movement to get justice for Oscar. And so the mantra was, I am Oscar Grant. And that really illustrated itself in the artistry that you have begun to see posted all over Oakland, and has carried on to today. As you know, those that are killed, the first thing that really begins to take place is to rehumanize him through artwork. Because, the system by design, when you're murdered, they attempt to murder you to make sure you stay dead, is they criminalize you, they dehumanize you, and they demoralize you. And they do the same when it comes to a protest. A legit peace-moving protest becomes criminalized, dehumanized, and demoralized for the simple fact they don't want the artist community to be a part of it. So they use these words, look at them looting and rioting, right? But a lot of times, who starts the rioting and who starts the looting are what you call undercover cops, acting as protesters. Many of them threw the first brick through the window in Oakland. And I'm not sure how many of you are on this Zoom call right now that was a part of the movement in Oakland, but I'm sure you're aware just how much of a role they played in it. And then there was also that element that had their own specific agenda that may have also lit something on fire. I mean, that happens in all protests anyway. There's going to be somewhat of that. But we can still get some form of justice by being aware that that's part of it, and the mass media is going to criminalize it, dehumanize it, and demoralize it, keep those that want to be a part of it away from
it. And you raise such a fantastic point, specifically by talking about the police from such a historical perspective. Right now, we're hearing a lot around the defund movement, to defund the police. This idea that people are starting to reimagine what starting over might look like. How does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, in 2015, 2016, 50% of police murders were people are in a crisis. Well, part of the idea of defunding means that we take part of that budget and we put it in maybe a community organization or some other entity that has the responsibility to engage those that are in a crisis. Because we can see that the policing agencies, though they have a budget for that, only give them 8 hours, some of them only 6 hours of training when it comes to crisis training. And when they approach somebody in a crisis, the first thing that ends up happening is they get killed. And so we know the percent still is about 50, 51%. So defunding means not defunding the police so they can't operate, but defunding from them so that other areas can be given to those that are specialized in that area. And I'm speaking more specifically for crisis intervention. You know, so that's just an idea of how defunding works. So defunding does have, I mean, it resonates with me because we know the bulk of the budget, we're saying Alameda County or the Oakland Police Department, is for policing. But yet, we don't have the proper school supplies and proper education that's going on in the Oakland Unified School District. We got so many people that are homeless. You know what I'm saying? All this money, instead of taking part of that budget to build affordable housing for those that are homeless, we have them arresting folks that are struggling, just trying to make it. You know, we can talk about the other areas. There's so many areas where defunding the police, that money can be applied to areas to help increase our opportunity to have real freedom, justice, and equality in the society.
Chris, I just want to check in on time. I know we want to still make some time for questions. Do I still have a minute to ask another?
Yeah, we're at 6:39 right now. And so 6:45 is rolling up, but those of you who want to put your questions in, you could definitely put your questions in the chat now. And then I will gather them up as you do the next question, Cav, and I could see if we could do, if you want to do a hard stop at 6:45, we can.
All right. So Uncle Bobby, just while we've worked our way through almost historically the movement in this very short period of time, tell us about this moment. What does this mean? The fact that we're starting to see such an awakening, the fact that 50 states have been protesting, 18 different countries. It speaks to almost a certain feeling, a certain sentiment on the ground that change or something of that effect seems to be taking place. Do you agree with that sentiment? Help us understand kind of where to from here. How do you see things playing out post the murder of Brother George Floyd?
I do agree with that sentiment. What we see happening really didn't just happen yesterday. It really was beginning to take place during the Oscar Grant movement. That's where the political education began to take place, and the council can talk, speaking and talking about police violence began to resonate, and the technology of the cell phone camera beginning to document this violence is real and allow others to see. Social media played a major role in it, especially Facebook. So now we all begin to see the violence of the police. And so no longer did we just have a juror, we'll say a specific white person as a juror, thinking that every single police officer is a good person. So the jury pool has begun to shrink. The policing agency's chief of police, give an example. What the chief of police of Minneapolis just said about what that officer did was criminal, and that he felt that he basically should be arrested, charged, and convicted, would never have been said 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, even 3 years ago. That is a huge change. And what helped change that is the fact that Chief G of the Bart Police Department had to resign because of Oscar. Chief Lee of the Stanford Police Department had to resign because of Trayvon Martin. Chief Schultz of the Chicago Police Department had to resign because of Laquan McDonald. Chief Batts had to resign because of the community outcry for Freddie Gray. You know, the chief in Detroit, or not Detroit, but Louisville, who just resigned, had to resign because of Breonna, what's her name, Taylor? Because of the outcry of the community. You hear what I'm saying? So these chiefs have come to realize that the outcry of the community can actually make or break them. And not only that, they have been forced to look at their officers and now step back and say, you know what, I can't condone this because the first person that's going to end up getting fired, like Chief Sir of San Francisco, because of Mario Woods, is going to be me. And so they are now making a stand to protect themselves. What I'm getting at is that what we see happening is that the agency is unraveling itself. Even there's questions about their union reps, because the union that they have is the strongest lobbyist group in the nation. And though they agree with everything the police does, the agency's chiefs and those in command now are questioning their motivation behind why they agree. So we got the police and agency unraveling, but I think what's even bigger is what happened yesterday when George Floyd's brother testified at the Judicial Committee, and the Congressional Black Caucus then finally brought forth a host of bills that we still got to work to make pass and stick, but make sense. Those bills, we talk about a national database held on officers so that they just can't kill somebody in New York and move to Oakland and get hired. You know what I'm saying? Same stuff we've been asking for 10 years ago is now finally coming to reality because people are finally hearing and seeing. So my point is this: the work that we have put in, the artistry that has been shown of these images of these young Black men, brown men, that's been murdered, has helped awaken everyone to this pain that we've been experiencing all over this country.
Absolutely. And you know, I almost get a sense that it has built almost this critical mass of, and it's starting to manifest itself in almost like an awakening, mass consciousness. And my last question before we get to the questions from the communities, it really refers to what you said earlier about Emmett Till, and in fact, it reminds me of an experience we had with you and your wife, Auntie Beatrice, in Chicago in 2015 when we went to the 60th anniversary of Emmett Till's murder, and we met with all of the other national families who have been affected by that level of state violence. But I think what struck me was the event took place almost a few weeks after Sandra Bland had been killed, and Sandra Bland's mother had come, and it was really the first time that she had come into that space. And I still remember the first time you embraced her. It almost felt like you were welcoming her into this, forgive me, but I think of it as like a death row club.
Right.
Tell us about the work that you do with these families, that your organization, I know you were one of the founders, you and your wife are one of the founders of the Oscar Grant Foundation, but you and your wife also work with the Love Not Blood campaign, or Love Not Blood Foundation as well. As you can see, I'm rocking a t-shirt representing. Tell us about the work that you do with these families and just how important it is.
Yes, of course, we did start the Oscar Grant Foundation, and then at the 5th year, my sister gained a voice. We gifted that to her, so her and Tatiana, Oscar's daughter, can take it in the direction that they felt. But we also started the Love Not Blood campaign, which is to carry on the same work, but also to expand the work, and really importantly, to embrace families. And so in 2014, we had a conference for families across the United States to come to Oakland. And 11 or 12 families came to Oakland. But since then, we've had a conference in Wayne State in Detroit. We had 50-some families. We had one at Merritt College in Oakland in 2018. We had 102 families. And then just last year in Las Vegas, where our conference was held at, we had 175 impacted families come to Las Vegas. So that work in embracing these families help families find some stability. We call it healing through resistance, because we know the best source of help for any family that experiences pain is a like family that have suffered that same type of pain. Because, you know, I understand the anger. You know, I understood Mike Brown's anger, you know, but I also was able to help work with him to begin to develop his ability to share what he felt and to begin to find ways that he can now embrace those that are in pain. And immediately he went straight to Minneapolis to embrace Floyd George's brother. You know what I'm saying? And so that work that we do of embracing families and helping them find some balance gives them the ability to begin to move forward in seeking justice for their loved one. You know, we've been building a playbook or a workbook for families so that when they, sadly, if they experience this, they know or have some ideas on the direction they can go. You know, how to get the autopsy report, you know, how to set up a visual for your family, how to go to city council meetings and begin to, you know, bring back to life your loved one, you know, how to begin to pursue various legislative change. You know, it's a lot of work when you're in a lot of pain, and in a lot of that pain, you're in anger and you're still trying to figure out what to do. Because I was so devastated that the type of pain that I had was really destructive pain. But somehow I was able to turn that destructive pain into constructive pain, bringing about, you know, what I was hoping, some real change for people to not have to experience this type of pain.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Thanks, Uncle Bobby. All right, I'm gonna defer to you, Chris. I see some questions popping up in the chat.
Questions popping up, and Jeremy Carson, you had your hand raised, buddies. Go ahead and start. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Well, first I wanted to say thank you so much, Uncle Bobby, for taking the time to speak with us. I have tremendous respect for what you've done and what you continue to do. You've been in this fight for 11 years now, right?
Right.
And seen the, I would say, ups and downs of this movement. There would be a fire that starts with, you know, Oscar Grant, but it seems to kind of die down. There'd be a fire that starts with Trayvon Martin that seems to die down. We seem to be at this kind of perfect storm of, you know, everything being locked down and everything like that, that we have the most ears that we've ever had and the most eyes that we've ever had on this particular situation. What do you think we should do as a community to encourage the movement and our government to take larger steps? Because it feels like they've taken incremental steps. But what do we need to do to take advantage of this moment and say, let's get this, well, let's get the ball over the goal line. Let's get this movement and get this issue addressed once and for all.
Right. So I think the artist community is so critical in waking up the conscience of everyone through your work. And I'm clear. I don't know if you've seen all the artwork that was done on Oscar. And first, thank you to Jeremy for the question and you know, being on this call. But the artwork that I saw of Oscar was really encouraging and inspiring. And it told us what happened to Oscar, but also what we needed to do to get justice for Oscar. So I think your role, or the art community role at this particular time, is to massage this firestorm that we see going on and then elevate it through the artistic work that you do, the expression, highlighting the pain first of the Black experience. You know, what happened to Black Wall Street? You know, where's the artwork that shows what happened during Black Wall Street or Rosewood? You know, where's the artwork that highlights more of Emmett Till? Because there was many that was highlighted with Emmett Till, but we got to bring that image back. Because what that does, it helps us all begin to see that, you know what, we haven't gone as far as we thought we have. This society has a lot of work to do to really bring real freedom, justice, and equality to all. And I think it was Nina Simone, wait a minute, it'll come to me. Nina Simone, I believe it was, that said, what did she say? She said, an artist's duty is to reflect the time. And every now and then a song comes along that defines this period of time. Or every now and then an artist comes along to reflect the time, right? Paul Robeson says, artists are the gatekeepers of the truth, and we are civilization's radical voice. That's huge. Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And I'm sure all the artists that I'm speaking to probably already know this. This is what Paul Robeson said. We are civilization's radical voice. We are civilization radical voice. So that means that artwork that you do is huge because it speaks essence to bringing us to the conscious level of what's really going on. You know, oh, let me add in this too. A great example would be Ryan Coogler, a young man in film school, troubled by what happened to Oscar, had to, you know, he wanted to put it on the big screen, so he drew a big old picture for the world to see this human being being murdered the way he was, and it impacted all of us. I mean, you know, Fruitvale Station was released the night Trayvon Martin verdict came out. And many folks went to see Fruitvale Station unconsciously unaware that because of what happened to Trayvon, you was drawn to this picture concerning Ryan Coogler and how he was going to portray this young man that supposedly got killed by the police. And the box office went off the chart with Fruitvale Station. I mean, I hope that helped.
It did, thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Next question, Oscar, are you up? You want me to read it?
I can read it, I think.
All right, go ahead.
So first of all, thank you, Uncle Bobby, for doing this for us. I think it's really important that we have someone like you sharing your experiences in your life about all this matter that personally concerns, and I think the artist community concerns. So my question is, I have seen that, you know, we're talking about defunding the police, but in this time right now, there are defunding the schools, and it's affecting the schools with budget. So my question is, how do you think that as an artist, I or we can help schools and communities that they need it? And do you think that will have an impact in the community, and how?
You know, through your artwork, you tell the story. I'm really of the belief that what we see happening right now were those that were impacted by the visualization of the artist's work that took place with Oscar, Freddie Gray, Laquan McDonald, Sandra Bland. I mean, this accumulation of all that artwork and highlighting, you know, because we know the cell phone did it also, but it was the internal aspect of expression through the artwork of highlighting these faces. Matter of fact, there was a painting that was just recently shared with my sister that highlighted, I think it was Michael Brown, Shalene Tyndall, Oscar Grant, Sandra Bland, of course, George Floyd. I think it was one of, but the beauty of that art really resonated with me. It resonates with families impacted, but also it brings to the consciousness of those that don't know the pain that we've been through, that idea of that pain. I hope that makes sense. So I think your contribution or how you can help is through the artwork of expression, you know, telling the story, the whole story through the artwork.
Thank you. Yeah, that answered the question, and yeah, it's important to hear that and sharing the question. And sometimes it's cruel and really raw, but I think it should be shared, and it's time to share it. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Oscar. Really appreciate it. Lindsay, you are up.
Yes. Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for this and the opportunity for me to be here in this conversation. It's really, really interesting, and I'm so glad that these kinds of conversations are happening more actively right now, and so grateful that I can be a part of them. And my question is about just more about what you were saying about making art in order to highlight the suffering and the voices and these individuals that have been unjustly murdered and wronged. And I guess, so I don't know if you know about this, but I live in downtown Oakland, and there's a lot of boarded up businesses. And apparently there is some organization that hired different artists to sort of write the names and paint the faces of some of these individuals that have been murdered due to police brutality. And I'm not aware of who the artists themselves are that made the work, but I heard that there is there has been problems in the Black art community because the people that were hired to make this street art and paint these images are white. And so, I mean, the question that the people that I've heard talking about it is that why aren't people of color being hired to represent this? And as a non-Black person, I don't feel like I can necessarily, I mean, I cannot empathize with the pain that you're talking about, right? So I would never want to claim that or make the impression that I am claiming that I can empathize, although I do want to make art about this, but I just want to make sure that I'm sort of doing it in the right way if I were to do it. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that. And yeah, that's my question.
Did Uncle Bobby freeze? Is he there?
I don't know.
Oh,
I
think he
he
may be frozen.
Okay, I'll check in on him.
Yeah, check in on him, and then let's see. Well, Lindsay.
Yeah.
That's a really good question, and without taking away from Uncle Bobby, that's something that is dear to me.
Yeah.
Because there was one of my friends named Laura, who actually painted African American woman, who was this famous model who was told by an Uber driver that her skin was too dark. And so he told her, "You're too ugly to be a supermodel." So Laura, white, decided to make a painting, about this woman. And she came to me asking, like, how do you paint Black skin? Mm-hmm. And so I helped her and worked with her. Mm-hmm. And so she had a difficult time. I don't want to go through the whole story, but she had a difficult time because she's white and she painted a Black person.
Right.
And I think it's unfortunate for people to, tell you what to paint that you're most passionate about. I'm okay with it. I think it's beautiful that you want to go out and let's say you want to paint me. Chris is cool. And, I want to paint Chris. I would think it would be the most honorable thing to do. And you'll learn to empathize with me more by painting the color of my skin. And I think it's kind of unjust for people to look at you and say, well, you have no business painting that. But then again, there's this line on narrative. What about the Levy artist who painted Emmett Till? Was that the right thing to do at the time? Could she have painted Oscar Grant? Could she have painted, any of the others who were slain? Yes, but she decided to do that, and that was kind of the, opposite end of the spectrum. But I think that if you were going to paint a Black narrative and from a white perspective, and you're doing it in a way that's respectful and loving, please do it. That's from me. If it's like, if you see something like that group you're telling me, like, hey, there's only white people drawing these murals about police brutality, please speak on it, because we need to have other perspectives. We need to have a diverse perspective.
Sure.
And so I think it's a good question, but if you want to continue, I hope Uncle Bobby could come on pretty soon. But if you want to elaborate? You want to talk about this a little bit more, please?
Well, I'm not sure if I would, I mean, I guess I could theoretically paint something, but like, let's say like the medium is photography that I use mainly. And so in that case, there's a lot of, I don't know, like in the photo world though, there's a lot, I mean, it's a predominantly white world, right? And so then there's imagery of African-American people. And then it's like, well, is there exploitation there? And that's such a questionable thing. And
yeah, well, here's the thing that I forgot the name of the artist, but there was an artist that says that there's a danger anytime that you put your art in a public setting. And so that, you know, there's always going to be that person that's going to say that, are you fetishing over the black body? And you could be taking a picture and you could be telling the story. And because of the color of your skin, you know, does affect the narrative. But it's your job, it's my job to talk and explain, you know, the thoughts, theories. Yeah, so sometimes when the picture speaks for itself, it's hard, you know.
Hey, Uncle Bobby's back. I'm sorry.
All right, Uncle Bobby's back. Let's get his perspective now.
Okay. I heard part of the question, and apologies, you know, being on the road is a little different, a little more challenging, but we're gonna make this work.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, first, thank you. Let me. I don't know if I said thank you to Oscar for his question, but Lindsay, also thank you for your question. And yes, I think it's, for instance, I'm gonna cite an example. When we had the artwork done at the Fruitvale Bart station, Bart was really hoping that we picked an artist that they wanted us to have, and we had to emphasize that the artist that we were going to choose was going to be a brother of color, and he was going to do the artwork. And do you know, it took almost a year and a half of arguing with them just to make that happen. But we stayed true to that because we just didn't want the artwork just to be done, but we wanted the artwork to be also representative of someone that looked like Oscar. I mean, that makes sense. So it is, you know, the art community's, I guess, requirement to help educate those that may not quite get it. You know, something like, it sounds like you got it, you know, you understood that, you know, you will never probably be able to experience the pain of a Black mother losing a child, or just the idea that she could lose her child, right? So at the same time, the art community that was selected to do the artwork in Oakland, because I heard about it myself, it does raise the question, when there's no Black artists a part of that artwork that's taking place, or not leading that artwork that's taking place.
Sorry, just before you continue, Uncle Bobby, and thank you for getting back on the line. We understand that you are on the way to San Diego, and I know that we had set this for 6 to 7. Do you still have some time for a few more questions? How are we looking on time?
I do. I'm good. Yes.
Good. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's do one more question.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean talk over you. I'm so sorry. All right, Adam, you're up, buddy. Are you there?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I wanted to say thank you as well for doing this and taking time out of your day to talk to everyone here. My question is, I guess I grew up in the punk community, and me and everyone who I grew up with in that community has been saying fuck the police since, you know, we were like 5, 6 years old, as soon as we could talk. And I've always been weary about change within the system. And though I feel like all the things that are happening right now are fantastic, like all the protests and everything that's going on, I think is great. But I'm weary that the politicians are making changes just to placate and have the protests stop, and that 6 months from now it's going to go back to business as usual. And how do we continue this to enact real change that lasts for a long period of time is, I guess, my question.
Right. Well, I mean, sadly, there were those that tried to hijack the Oscar Grant movement, the Trayvon Martin movement, you know, the Freddie Gray, Laquan McDonald's, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland. We could go on, Eric Gardner. I mean, just so many names. That's a part, sadly, a part of the movement. You know, when I talked about the protests, there are those that are really protesting for the cause, and then those that come along because they have their own personal agenda. The same goes to say with the legislation. Now, we're happy the Congressional Black Caucus is finally putting forth some bills, but where were they 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just a real question. You know, what did they do 10 years ago? Obama was, I mean, on January 1st, 2009, Oscar Grant, Adolph Grimes, and Robbie Tolan, all 22-year-old Black men, all shot in the back by the police. Adolph Grimes dies, Oscar dies, Robbie Tolan lives, right? 19 days later, Obama's inaugurated. Police violence is happening. He 2 weeks later brings in Eric Holder to top cop of the nation. 3 months later, Henry Louis Gates is going in his house. He's accosted by the police. Obama calls him, you know, stupid. The police union attacks Obama. Obama apologized, and then he suggests we have a beer conference, a beer summit. They meet at the White House. They drink beer. They talk about race. And right after that, the killing of Black life took off.
Wow.
Not nobody. This what angered me at that time, especially that looked like me, really had a concern about the bodies that was being killed by the police in this country, right? So yeah, there was some pain in that, but the reality of it is that those that begin to do it had their own personal agenda. You know, that's just a part of the reality. But what we can do is continuously look at those that are progressive and really believe in the cause and support them, be behind them, and then have them make sure they support the families. The families has to be at the table. And if they're inviting the families to the table on a regular, consistent basis, and we see tears falling from their eyes, and we see now that they have a little cousin or someone they didn't know in their family that was killed by the police, then we know there is some chance that they're doing this from the heart. Dr. Shirley Weber, who pushed for AB 392, kept looking at her grandchildren and thought about their lives and knew that she had to do something to bring about a change. And she did it from the heart. She's been doing this work from the heart. And she took a lot of heat, right? From the policing agencies, from various other political folks. She could have ruined her whole career, but she stayed true to the course. There are many that don't. So we still got to push them. And if they fall off, we just grab somebody else, but we keep moving things forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Uncle Bobby, I think we have one more from Nakisha. Do you want to go ahead and jump on?
Sure. So a lot of the artwork, first, Uncle Bobby, thank you so much for all of your words, for the time that you spent with us this evening, and just sharing your heart for your nephew and for the work that you've been doing and all that you've been able to accomplish. So my question is around the artwork. And so a lot of artwork that's made about Black people focuses on suffering, especially, work that arises after the tragic murder of Black people. But I was wondering, how important do you think it is for artists to showcase the nuances of Black people, especially our joy?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
How important do you think it is for artists to showcase the nuances of Black people, especially our joy?
I mean, it's important. All aspects, not only the sadly the pain, but also what has empowered us. And so I think the artwork that artists can do has to portray the whole echelon of what we have done, what we have been through, and the reality of our experience.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Let me just throw this in there right before you. I'm sorry. So,
it's your show.
I just wanted to say, freedom, justice, equality has to be seen through artwork for all of us, right? I think sadly, the leaving open the casket of Emmett Till created the firestorm of what we saw with the civil rights movement. The video of Oscar Grant, sadly, even though it was painful, really created what we see happening today with George Michael. But that pain is a part of our experience that has to be shared. The work that we do through the Love Not Blood campaign is working with people, whether it be artists, entertainers, activists, and families that's been impacted, to help create the idea that we can really bring in freedom, justice, and equality. So I definitely want to encourage all of you to visit our website, which is the Love Not Blood campaign. Cav, I know you can probably text that, put it on the chat for everybody to be able to go to.
Sure.
But yes, I just wanted to say thank you too for having me on this time and giving me this opportunity to share with you.
Thank you.
Art is so critical in bringing about this victory of real freedom, justice, and equality.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This is a big honor to have you here, and thank you for taking the time driving. And I hope you're not driving, right? One hand.
No.
Okay,
I was driving. No, we stopped. We had to pull over.
That's awesome. Cap, the floor is yours, man.
Yeah. So first of all, Uncle Bobby, before you go, I need you to turn the phone to your lovely wife, Auntie Beatrice. I think people need to see your better half. Auntie B, where are you, Auntie B?
Cav, you know her well.
Oh,
hey,
I told you I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, thank you, for sharing the website with everyone too. But here she goes.
We need to see how she looks like.
Oh, thank you.
She's known as
Auntie
B. Aunt B, she really, what George Floyd, just to give an example for all to know, we get calls from all over the country on a regular, consistent basis of families that's been impacted. Of course, the family, we didn't know we met the George Floyd family years ago in Houston from a screening of Fruitvale Station. One of the brothers came, and we actually met him. Of course, years passed, and who knew that they would be in this limelight now. But I'm just saying to say, she has really been able to embrace these mothers and these families in a way that they feel confident to be able to call and suggest other parents that are going through this trouble to call us or to call her, and then we go meet them and we embrace them.
I just wanted to say to all the great artists out there, what a great road to go down. You just don't know the arts and what you can do to not just you touch, people watch movies all the time. What does movies do for you, right? And then you can see what can you do to put that out there through art, through whatever the art is that you use, that you're going to touch somebody to the point where they are able to get up and do something. Because we have to have, everybody got something to do. If this world is going to be a better place for our children and grandchildren, we all have a job right now. Besides our job, our 8 to 5. We used to say Uncle Bobby had a job, but he had another job, right? So we was always working like that. And people couldn't even believe he even had a job for real in the daytime, because all the work that's being done. But everyone right now, if we want a better,
looks like a bad connection on the road. That's the curse of internet and technology right now.
Okay, well, Auntie B, we can't hear you. Oh, there we go. She's going at it. She's going. That's what I wanted everyone to hear.
She is preaching. Yeah, that's like my mom right there, my aunt.
So the reason why I wanted everyone to see Auntie B is because really works equally as hard as her husband. I know she's speaking. I don't want this to seem disrespectful. It's just, I know she can't hear us. But she works equally as hard as her husband, and really they are a team. It's not just Uncle Bobby, and she deserves equal credit. And I wanted just really to thank everyone for participating, because we can't hear you, Auntie B. We can't hear you. I think, yeah, they've got two phones. Hey, Uncle Bobby, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. Okay. So if you can hear us, we're just doing the closing. If you can hear us, if you don't mind just bearing with us. Oh, he just logged off.
Oh, we back.
Okay. Oh, you back?
Okay.
Yes.
We didn't hear the last 30 seconds of B preaching over there. She was getting down, and we just didn't hear the last 30 seconds.
Can you give us the last 30 seconds, Auntie B? One last time.
Oh, we still can't hear. You got to take it off on take it off on mute. I think you may have it on mute.
What about now?
Oh, we can hear.
Now we can hear it.
I was just gonna say that.
Yes.
Black Lives Matter. When Black lives start to matter to everyone, then every life will be better. Not that Black life is better than any other life, but with the history of trying to destroy Black life, that's why no other life matters. It's one for all and all for one. So we deserve the same freedom, justice, and equalities as everyone, and everyone deserves freedom, justice, and equality. That goes for our Native family and our brown brothers and sisters. Everybody should be freedom, justice, and equality across the board. And if we could just see how simple that is? If we could just do that, what's so hard about everybody being treated equally? What's up? Y'all go ahead. Simple of freedom, justice, and equality for everybody. Make it take over the arts. Make it take over the world so that it can generate and penetrate hearts and minds and creative thoughts to where people can really sense freedom, justice, and equality for everybody. And that's my message.
Great.
Well, hey, Auntie B, you see, you always literally bring me to tears. I want you to know
that's my
one
little
thing.
baby. He always
I
calls
love you.
Patrick.
I love you. I love you. All right, thank you. I wanted to say on behalf of, firstly, the institution, San Francisco Art Institute and Grad Voice, thank you. Thank you so much for making time. We know you're on the road to San Diego. You didn't even really have to do this, but you did. And we are so appreciative of that. Secondly, there's so many other conversations we can have that I'm sure we would love to continue having. So if the door remains open, we would love to have you back for another talk at some point in the future. Say hi to your great grandbaby.
Yeah.
Say hi to LaShonda and the rest of the family. Drive safely. And from all of us here in the SFAI community, goodbye and thank you very much.
Bye-bye. And Jennifer Risler, thank you. Chris Paddock, thank you for streaming through technical issues. My Apple crew, Jeremy, thank you, Kelly. I know you're on there. Mads, that's the awesome name that I wish I could change my name to Mads Williams. That's cool. And Aunt B and Uncle Bobby, you guys are beautiful. And
thank you.
Hopefully I can have you over the house for a barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
I can throw down. I'm serious. This is East Oakland barbecue.
I just wanted to say that this work that we do, if you know people who throw money away, because this work is real important and a lot of people don't support it, even though they talk, they don't really support it, right? But if you could support, because we support families, you could go to www.loveyourblood campaign and support, even if it's $5. Right now we're out making sure that families that's in the protest have masks, hand sanitizer, water, stuff to keep everybody safe, and we're doing that work. And we would appreciate it if we could continue to do it. Thank you.
Yes. And I know everyone on this room here is all allies, and I appreciate you for being here. And thank you, Shelly, for showing up from Texas. And everyone, good night.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
You.
Thank you, Christopher.
Good night.
Thank you, Cup.
Yes.